how do you sort of protect that authenticity, that magic of like that initial, that really what's giving the soul of the track?
That's honestly like the artist struggle. Like that is the human condition for the artist. I think it was like Brian Eno says something about like his like number one goal is, definitely butchering this, but his number one goal is to just like finish the song before he messes it up, essentially. Do
you think that artists are meant to reflect the world, or do you think they're meant to offer an escape, or it could be a bit of both?
The whole art imitating life imitating art is like a real thing, and I think our job is to, again, I think it's to create a space where emotions can come up. The idea that we listen to, like, if you're sad, you might listen to sad music, but it's to make you feel better. And it's not so much about the emotion the song is conveying, but it's about the song creating space for you to emote in a way.
Welcome back to Mission Makers. I'm your host, Farah Nanji, and we are at Amsterdam, ADE. And I'm here hanging in the studio with Enamour before our label event. How are you doing? How's your ADE been?
It's been great. I'm doing good. Got 8 hours of sleep last night, which is surprising for ADE. Yeah, all good.
Nice. I'm very happy that you got that amount of sleep. We like to kind of kick off a little bit with a bit of a dissection on our guest names. So do you know what actually you do know what your alias means because you named the alias, but obviously it means to kind of infatuate, inspire, fascination. So what sort of drew you to that word, and how do you think it reflects your mission?
It was the definition that drew me to it, because especially when I was first launching the project, the music I was making and wanted to make was the kind of thing that you can just listen to over and over and you fall in love with the song, and it kind of just creates that, in love emotion within you. And it's not just love, like you said, it's kind of the fascination. It's like to feel inspired. It's like to be lifted. It's a much deeper emotion, I think. And it just resonated a lot with me. And similarly, in a lot of languages, it's pretty universal. Not necessarily that Enamour is a word, but like Enamour in French or in Spanish. So I just thought it was something that could connect with a lot of people. And sometimes people don't actually realize that it is Enamour, and they just say like Enamour. And I'm like, no, it's actually a word in the dictionary.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. Well, I think it's really nice. It really has, it's catchy. Feels like, you've owned it really. And I feel like it reflects your music as well, quite a lot. And talking about music, I know that you have a background in business because I think you're a management consultant first before you went full time. So do you feel like that's shaped your career, just even maybe in the ways that you approach your music? Like obviously coming from the corporate life, has its own sort of...
I wouldn't say it's necessarily how I approach the music, but certainly the career for sure. I find that I take a lot of the skills I learned in business school and in the corporate job for granted until I talk to someone who hasn't had that experience and realize like, oh, all these things I'm really conscious of and like anal about, like just collecting royalties and making sure you're signed up for every, organization and just all this back end stuff that potentially a manager would do. I'm just, before I had a manager and even now I'm just like very on top of that. And I think it helps reduce the stress on the musical side because you have, all the engines running behind you, as far as like making it a career that is sustaining.
It's a huge blessing. I went to business school as well, so I kind of like feel like I know that it's such a blessing to have it, because almost everything is a business, and like you have to really think like you're driving that ship, like you are. Otherwise, that's when people take advantage of you. You get exploited. Did you do like a market analysis of the scene before you jumped the ship full time?
I didn't go that in depth. I think it's a lot of the soft skills too, just like understanding how to communicate in a way that allows you to get what you want, and negotiating, and just understanding how certain deals work and just kind of the economics behind it. And I actually gave a talk on Thursday at the ADE lab about turning your producer hobby into a full-time career. And like one of the big takeaways is you have to start thinking of yourself as a business, especially as you build a team. Like that is what it is. Just because you're an artist doesn't mean the thing that wraps around you isn't a business, which it is. So yeah, I think just understanding that earlier and kind of getting all your ducks in a row, and then yeah, making sure you don't get taken advantage of, making sure you're being strategic with a lot of your decision making. It's just all the non-glorious things about, the artist project.
I'm curious to know, like, at the talk that you did at ADE, because, like, I guess probably what a lot of emerging artists, would be battling is, unless they have a job outside of music, and if that then, and this is their entire like livelihood, like obviously you don't see money come in quite like for a long time, right? So did that question come up, or did you have anything to like sort of advise them on?
Yeah, that was a big part of it. The deeper I've gotten into the industry and the more people I've met, the more I've learned that a lot of your favorite artists, obviously not at the top level, but at the mid-level and certainly below that, they're not doing music full time. Even if they're touring, 50 shows a year, they might be coding part-time. They might be, married to someone that is just supporting more of the home. They might have made a lot of money in crypto during COVID or something, or they might, just have generational wealth. Like there's all these stories that you hear, and there's no like judgment to be passed on it. It's just, for someone coming up, don't assume that the people you're trying to emulate or like your role models are actually making a ton of money from music. They're just being strategic, and they're making their money so that they can be an artist and do whatever they want musically, not compromise, that kind of thing. And especially nowadays, I think crypto is actually a big one. Like you could have just made a huge windfall, like getting lucky or something. And then suddenly it's like, well, when someone asks you the question, what would you do if you didn't have to worry about money? It's like, well, you'd be a musician or an artist. And I think people don't realize that that's a lot of it. So obviously you want to make a full-time career, make all your money from what you're doing. Like that's a huge success. But I just stress that it shouldn't be the end all be all if you know how to code already, or if you have a corporate job, for example. Even just saving up a lot of money before you quit, is way smarter in my opinion than just kind of going head first, because then you end up sacrificing your art, or making concessions on the people you remix or like the deals you take because you need the money.
Yeah, and you have like a bit of a rude awakening, because it's not like you jump to the other side and the grass is very like lush, right?
Yeah,
it's a bit of a drought before.
It's really hard to make money.
It is.
And it's probably only getting harder, honestly.
Exactly. I mean, like I was having this really interesting chat with somebody I work with called Danny Whittle. And he was like, making it now as an artist, as a DJ, it's like making it into the Premier League. Like there really are only a handful. And I think that it's so important that you have financial stability outside of music, because otherwise, as you say, like you compromise your artistic integrity. And also it feels so nice to invest in your own work, right? And it takes that investment, because unless you have like some huge like backers, but that is also like, that's like, not many people have that.
And people don't realize how much you do have to invest, especially now with like marketing and branding, and some people even pay to be on festivals, but it's considered an investment.
Yeah, it's true. So how are you feeling with that being said about like electronic music right now in 2025?
It's like a love-hate thing. Well, hate's a strong word, but I'm having a great time. Like everything's going pretty well for me. And I think the scene is in a weird place, but not a bad place. I think a lot of artists are, taking the money while it's there, because it's been so scarce. There's just a lot of commercial opportunity now, and I think that's great. And I'm happy that like this genre is exploding. And I think if anything, the only issue is that that's kind of created this like dip in like the middle class of artists, similar just to the economy at scale, where there's so much money being shoved into the system, but it's mostly going to the top. So it's in a weird place for that. But like musically, I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff happening. There's a lot of, like revival of the 80s sound and the 90s sound, and now sort of even the 2000 sound. And it's just kind of fun, like seeing these cycles come back and just like where everything is musically. And I'm kind of happy that what is considered EDM now is much closer to what I'm doing than like the 2014 of like David Guetta or whatever. And a lot of those really big legacy acts are kind of turning to like what we're doing a little bit more. So it's nice to be sort of what's popular. But it is, yeah, just it's you wouldn't have expected it, I guess. So I'm still navigating like what does it mean to like have to potentially like sometimes compromise on this commercial side only because it's what's available right now.
Do you feel like you do have to compromise a lot commercially, or can
Not
you keep
musically,
your own? Okay.
I would say it's more so like the opportunities you take, certain festivals or certain, people you want to be associated with that they wouldn't have been on your list originally, but then they actually converge closer to what you're doing and you're like, oh, maybe this makes sense now. But it's all good things, like ideally the rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then more like, more pockets emerge, right? That's kind of tends to be what happens.
The first layer of the funnel is like absolutely gigantic right now. And I think we're not yet at the point where they make it down to these deeper genres. But when that happens, it'll kind of feel like 2019 again, I think, where a lot of these subgenres kind of blow up again.
Yeah, hopefully that's where it can expand to, obviously in the face of I mean, I don't know how it is like for you being back in America. I mean, just even that sentence alone is probably quite tough to imagine, but like on a a sort of a club sense, because like here in Europe, like the clubs are a threat, it's very hard to survive as an operator these days. I mean, yeah, how is it for you back home?
Yeah, I think it's similar. It is just kind of that like carving out of the middle class of, the industry as a whole, where I think a lot of the like partying habits of the younger generation are dramatically different from what we would have expected. And it seems that a lot of younger people would rather save their money and go to one huge party a month instead of going to the club every weekend. Whereas I would go to the club every weekend, and then the festivals would be like a special thing. And that's kind of the trend that I've seen. So there's all these parties happening, tons of, sold out shows in America, but they're run by the three big companies in the country. The headliners are the same, top 50 people. And then all the clubs are kind of, barely scraping by. But it doesn't feel like dire. And I think that's maybe just because there's just so much happening. Like there's, 50 cities at least that have pretty strong scenes. Yeah, it's hard to tell. I've heard, plenty of struggles, but then you see all these gigantic festivals like still succeeding. So
yeah,
it's just a shame that it's, the consolidation has caused a lot of those issues.
Yeah, it's a real shame.
We're getting into like serious economics right now.
We don't want to scare too many people away, but yeah. Okay, well let's move into more like the the musical side of things. So like it's very evident whether you listen to like your sets or your productions that you're weaving quite like cinematic organic elements, and I'm just curious, like when you're creating, are you consciously expressing a specific type of emotion that you want to kind of empower your listeners with, or is it completely free flow, like how you feel in that moment is just what's coming through?
I think it's both. When I go into the studio, the ideal situation, if like my mind is relatively clear, is to create a space where an emotion can come up. Sometimes, I mean, I think art therapy is like a real thing. And for me, I think sometimes just being in the studio making music is very therapeutic. So ideally, I create the space for something that, I'm not necessarily conscious of initially to come out. And then when I look back on it, I'm like, it makes sense that I made this type of song at that moment. So it is definitely expressing an emotion, but I'm not always going into the studio being like, this is exactly what I want to do. But that said, especially for the clubbier tracks and like the sillier, quirkier ones that I've made, it is sometimes that I will go in the studio and be like, I want to make the kind of track that in a set would serve this purpose. And it's like the one that like kind of makes people like a little uncomfortable and like edgy, but then it resolves and it's like a stronger release because of that. So it is definitely both, kind of depending on if it's a sillier track or a more like heartwarming, emotional track.
What are some of the emotions that you really like to play with?
I really do love the silly, like building anticipation, kind of keeping you on the edge of your seat in a way that in the right environment can make the song you play after that song go so much further emotionally because you've kind of left these people in this like edgy situation. So that's a really fun one. But also, of course, just the really heartwarming, like melancholy, but hopeful. Earlier in the project, I like to use the word wistful a lot. I don't use it much anymore, but it is kind of that. It was always like looking out of a train window in a country you've never been to while it's raining, like just like you're thinking of like reflective, and it's kind of melancholy, but it's not sad. It's just, nostalgic in a way. It's a hard thing to capture, but when you hear it, you know it,
Well, that could be a lot of people making their commute back from ADE right now because, like, my God, the amount of rain this week is actually been quite brutal. Would you say, like, that you're more of an introvert or an extrovert?
Definitely an introvert.
Okay, interesting. So how do you, me too as well, but like how do you find navigating a week like this, which is like quite overwhelming because there's a lot of people just literally walking out of your front door and like, you got to look like 10 directions before you don't want to get hit by a cyclist or something. Yeah. And then just the amount of like, people that are just in Amsterdam and obviously ADE as well. Like,
I think over the years, I've made a conscious effort to get better at, relationship building, networking. Just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you can't be like the life of the party. I think it's more the conception that, or, it's a misconception that that's the case. And it's more so just where the energy comes from. So if I'm going out multiple nights, I feel more drained than an extrovert who would be like, this is pushing me up. Yeah. So I try to embody the character of someone that is an extrovert and like almost act in a way. It's still authentically me, but it's more just in the back of my head, I'm reminding myself like, this is what you came here to do. I also like to get a really small hotel room so that I'm forced to not stay in it. So like I wake up and I'm like, I got to get out of here. And then you just find stuff to do and hang out, meet people.
That's an interesting way to challenge yourself.
It was, I don't remember where I started doing that, but it helps because you don't want to get like trapped in your comfort zone. And, you don't want to be like, even if I want to do some emails, I'm like, oh, I have to go to a cafe now. And then you run into someone and I don't know. Little hack.
Definitely. And I feel like, that being said, it's just more about sort of as well getting that time to yourself, like to recharge at the end, like when you have experienced a lot of that, right? But I'm
kind of just push it, kick the can down the curb for 3 days. And then when you get home next week, that's when
out of office for a week. Don't talk to me. Interesting. So like looking back, a couple of big turning points for you was the DJ Mag, one of the artists to watch. I think it was 2018. You released on Lane 8's imprint, I think before that. And then also you had a string of amazing releases on Anjunadeep. How did those opportunities really come about? Were you represented at the time? Were you self-hustling, making those connections yourself and, breaking down those walls?
Completely by myself at that point. The Lane 8 thing started. So that was always a big goal of mine, as I was starting the Enamour project. He came to DC for a show. This was when he was playing like 500 person rooms, even less maybe. And at the end of the show, I actually knew the club owner and I had played there before. So I knew the security guard. So I just like told the security guard, like, don't kick me out at the end of the night. I'm going to just like stand behind you. And I did. And then like the second he came down from the booth, I like attacked him.
Made a beeline.
And just tried to say like my little pitch, got his email. And then after that, I sent him some tracks. He was really kind and gave me some feedback, but they weren't quite there yet. And I think I just made it clear that like this was going to happen, whether he liked it or not, and was just sending him demos, but like, not wasting his time. And I think it took almost 8 or 9 months before he was like, this one's the one, like, here's a couple things to do. He was like very A&R about it, which is kind of hard to find these days with a label, but gave a lot of feedback, signed those tracks. I think it was Still Life and Soul release at that time. And from there, I think I was the only American artist on his label at the time. So it naturally led to support slots for his like second market tour. Just kind of good timing. And then the DJ Mag author just reached out. I just got an email one day, I'm pretty sure, that she wanted to do a little feature. And I think that probably got the attention of the initial managers that started to reach out to me. And then from there, I can't remember if Ruby was before or after. I think my management wasn't until 2019. So I think Ruby was before. But yeah, it was just me reaching out, being persistent, not being annoying, and then just making sure not to waste people's time with demos that weren't polished, ready to go kind of thing. Unfortunately, I think it's a lot harder these days because I got to Lane 8 before he was where he is now, obviously. And then similarly, Anjuna was huge, but I think now they're huge and bombarded on a daily basis with thousands of demos.
But so did you just reach out cold, or did you know any of the A&R email addresses to kind of go by?
I think I might have. Yeah, I think I met someone who knew the Anjuna Beats A&R, and then through them I was able to get to the Anjunadeep A&R. But it was not necessarily like a warm intro. It was still kind of just like, here's his email address. And then I guess it helped that I was obviously with Lane 8 at that point because they were familiar with him. So just, starting the email with like, hey, it's Enamour who has just released on This Never Happened. I think that gets them to listen to the music.
100%. Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for sharing that. And then obviously, since then you've released on some incredible labels, Abracadabra, Across Town, Rebels, Rose Avenue. And I'm curious to know, as a producer of your caliber at this stage, how do you approach your release strategy? Do you sort of, how far ahead in advance are you creating when you're in the studio? And what do you
this is actually one of the most interesting, misconceptions about the artist career in the industry. Usually when you hear an artist's release the day it comes out, that could be anywhere from something they made from 6 to 18 months ago, maybe even longer than that, because you make the record, you work on it, you revise it, you send it to a label. That could take 6 months before they even get back to you with a yes or a no. And then they're slotting it into their schedule, which could be another 6 to 12 months depending on the label. So I already have stuff lined up for as late as January, February, as well as a Q2 TBD, Q3 TBD. So yeah, you're always working, months and months in advance. I'd say remixes are a more accurate picture of an artist's work because those usually have a shorter timeline. But yeah, as far as strategizing the approach, with a lot of these labels, you don't always have a choice. Sometimes they'll just give you a date, and we used to just kind of take it that way. And one time I had 3 tracks come out the same week, and that kind of sucked. And then,
oh no, that really sucks. And you couldn't avoid that, obviously,
because one was a remix for Ryex, which is a major label, so there was no flexibility there. And then one was a compilation, so they're not going to ask 19 other people if they can move it. And then the third one was a collab on someone else's EP, so I didn't really have any leverage for any of them. And I used it as an opportunity. I made a post. We happened to just do a photo shoot where we had double exposure of me looking this way and me looking that way. And I was like, this is a good opportunity. We could use this cool photo and then write a caption about how my sound is very diverse. It always has been. That's kind of the goal with the project. And then highlight, I have a track in this super underground label, very dark. I have a silly tech house track with, crazy saxophone solo. And then this really emotional remix for Ryex. And it's the perfect 3 sides of my sound. So I kind of, tried to take advantage of the situation. But since then, we've gotten a lot more leverage. Me and my manager don't really take no for an answer these days when it comes to, conflicting releases. And, we just try to find out the date early. We say this is not going to work and just sort of say it's not going to work. Not can you change it? But it takes the time to get that kind of leverage and to, have the ability to flex things around.
And those labels, are they approaching you, or are you creating something in the studio and thinking, oh, this would be great for let's say Rose Avenue? You might probably know the guy, so reach out to him personally. You've got that relationship.
Yeah, it's always the latter. Well, I've been asked by labels hey, do you have anything coming up? That happens plenty of times. But for me, I like to just write music. And then once the song is finished, I think about where it should go. If someone asks and, it's a relationship I have, I'll send them stuff. But I would say more often than not, it's me kind of picking this is where I want it to go. And then after they say no, I go to the next one down the list.
And when you're, in the studio, and you're working on fire, how do you sort of protect that authenticity, that magic of like that initial, that really what's giving the soul of the track before you kind of maybe, I don't know if you do face that problem, but obviously a lot of people do have over perfectionism or like maybe stepping away and then the time has kind of passed and that magic has gone.
That's honestly like the artist struggle. Like that is the human condition for the artist. I think it was like Brian Eno says something about like his like number one goal is, I'm definitely butchering this, but his number one goal is to just like finish the song before he messes it up, essentially. Because I am a perfectionist and I've gotten way better at just letting go. It's not so much that I'm a perfectionist, it's just I'm very involved in the details and I want it to be immersive on headphones and I want to have these little swirling things around your head and, just make it very special and interesting. And yeah, you can tend to overproduce a track when that's the style you go for. I think there have been many, many tracks where I did lose the magic and it's just no longer there and, it's unfortunate. But my strategy is just do what you can to get a new perspective on the song before you keep editing it. So at any one time, I'm working on 50 songs. Like, I don't understand the people who are like, I have to finish this one and then it's done forever. And then I go to the next one. And I'm opening new projects, the old projects every day. Probably not the most efficient way to do it, but it just works for me because I can take a month off of a song, still be productive with all these other things, and then come back to it with fresh ears and just go, oh, the mix isn't right. Like, what is this chord stab even doing here? It should not be in the track. And just make these hard, fast decisions, which you can't really do if you've been listening to it over and over again.
Okay, so but then when you've got like these 50 tracks all in one go, like how long on average do you think you're spending on one, or it just depends on the project and what's happening in there?
It definitely depends on the project. I keep trying to remember to download one of those tools that shows you how long you've worked on every project, because it'd be a fun fact. I would say the ones that get finished the fastest are usually the ones that are the special ones. You can tell like there's a reason it just kind of came out of you and then wasn't too complicated to finalize. But yeah, there's definitely tracks I've probably spent like 100 hours on. The ones that are especially detailed or technical, I think, can take a really long time. The more songwriting focused ones are, you get like 90% of the way very quickly. And then it's like, oh, this is really good. I better not mess it up. And then you spend like 50 hours just like perfecting the mix, taking out all the little things. So I think a long part of the process is the mix master phase, which I usually do myself.
You're mastering it as well?
I master a lot of all the remixes usually, unless the label is very adamant or I just feel like someone could, have a second pair of ears on it, then I'll have someone do it. But I've, learned a lot from a lot of really talented engineers, and so many times I've just gotten masters back from the label person that I'm like, this is not better. And it's just got frustrating. So I've just been doing it myself. I think with club music, this is getting a little technical, but because I mix into my own master chain, a lot of the decisions I'm making were built around working into that chain. So when you take those things off and you send it to someone and they send it back and it's, not as loud, but somehow it's more compressed, you're just like, okay, you're not worse than me, but like, I didn't set you up for success because I was mixing into my personal thing.
And there's no way that, not no way, but it's more often than not then obviously with that way that you're going to come back, that it's going to come back the way that was intended maybe. Like,
yeah, and I'm testing it in the club. So like, I know if this was like an album, I would never do it myself. Sure. But this is like, you want the kick to be really loud and like you need everything to be balanced and it has to sound good, at 110 decibels. And I don't think the engineer is, putting it on USB
110
and going to the club.
Going to the
but
club,
like I've done that 40 times.
With crowd.
Like, I know the track works.
Yeah.
Don't touch it.
Now, speaking of going to the club, so when you're performing and you're like on the road and, playing in front of thousands of people, as an introvert, like how do you connect with yourself? Like after just sort of that adrenaline obviously does take over. It's quite hard to go to sleep once you've, had such an amazing show or something. apart from the small hotel room. Any hacks that you like to keep?
And to be clear, on the touring side, I do not like a small hotel room.
Yeah, don't put that on the rider.
Yeah, definitely not. This is ADE only. Yeah, it's really tough. I think a lot of people don't realize there's always like the DJ's complaining meme. And it's not so much the emotional aspect of, playing in front of whatever, 1,000 people and then going back to this hotel room by yourself. It's a literal chemical imbalance that happens, like having the endorphins, the dopamine, the serotonin, like it's like almost a drug that you're being able to just be the center of attention, playing for these people, feeding off the energy, and it's just all builds up and it's like this amazing thing. You're doing what you love, and then it's just over in an instant. It doesn't like fade away. It's just you press pause, someone cuts the music, and it's just done. And then maybe you meet some fans, maybe you hang out at a party after or whatever, but either way, you're kind of in this afterglow. And then, you get to the hotel and your brain is just confused. Like, even if you're very grounded, there's still like all these chemicals just like draining. And I think for me, at least, it does help to just kind of reflect on how it went a little bit. And just try to get to sleep as fast as possible. I try not to, for me, it's usually just a matter of like, when did I have caffeine last? Because once I get to the hotel room, I'm usually just crashing because all of the adrenaline is like draining out and I just feel like exhausted. But it is, emotionally it's tough though. Like, I've been touring like every weekend this summer, and throughout the week, like, you do kind of feel pretty drained. And you don't know why, because you're like, things are going well. Like, I should feel good. But you're just like washing your brain with all this adrenaline every weekend, and it's not natural. So it can be tough, but I think, just staying grateful for like the opportunities you have. Making music helps. The weeks I can't make music because I'm busy doing other stuff, I can tell I definitely feel a lot worse.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I would say, like, obviously, because your music kind of feels quite cinematic, if you could describe it as like a color or a texture, how would you describe it? Tough question.
I like to think of it kind of like shiny in a way. I feel like there's like two types of dance music, like the raw sort of associated with like an old school thing, and then more of a futuristic, like pristine kind of vibe. And I'm more on the latter. And I don't know, I think there's like a shininess to my sound in a way where things feel clean and detailed and immersive. Sort of like you're walking into like a colorful, spectrum of sound.
Like a rainbow.
Yeah. Texturally, I'm not quite sure.
Fair. Okay, nice. And, we talked a little bit about like the pitch and stuff. So, the young producers at ADE, how do you wish they approach you? Like, because obviously people probably do approach you quite a lot. What sort of things like get your attention to actually even just listen to the music itself? Yeah,
I think I'm pretty generous with people who don't approach me the right way, and I still give them the time of day, just because it's like, it's not natural for a lot of people, and you never know. Like, sometimes the most awkward people make the best music.
Pretty empathetic of you.
It gets tough at certain events when you can tell they aren't necessarily your fans and they don't really know what you do. They just think it's an opportunity. I think that's the biggest thing, is like making sure you convey that you're there for a reason. Sometimes I'll get a demo that's like a 135 UK garage track, and I'm just like, this is cool, but why are you sending it to me? So I think approaching the person your target act or whatever with respect and maybe saying a nice thing or two that kind of hints that who they are. Maybe it's like a deep cut that you love, and they're like, oh, if they like that song, like, they know what's up. Whereas if you just, maybe it's like the biggest hit of theirs that you say they like, that can sometimes turn people off, or just say like, how much of a fan are you really? But I think more than that, it's just about being casual and not making it feel transactional. So if someone comes up with like their USB in hand and just is like, hey, love your stuff, like, would love you to check out my music, I'll probably still listen to it, like, you gave me a USB, but the people who I've really built actual relationships with just come up to you like, hey, how's it going? Like, what's your AD? Like you don't even realize that they're an artist until 10 minutes into the conversation, where maybe as they're saying bye, they're like, by the way, can I send you a demo? Or, you know, they connect on Instagram and then a week later they DM you about sending you something. Or maybe you see them at an event 6 months later at another event, you just recognize them and it takes 2 years before they send you anything. Like, it's more about building an authentic relationship with someone as a person, not as a tool to get you somewhere. And those are the people that I have a lot of time for, because we are just, you know, friends at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I just think that sometimes there's this kind of like perception where, well, if you've kind of crossed to that bridge where you're successful in touring, that like, you know, you're kind of like, you have to listen to everything, or you have to help everyone. Like, it's not humanly possible. And yeah, you've got to be selective with your energy as well, and like protect it, to be honest with you, like in a way. And also, it's like, just think about how much music you play in a set, right? Like, it's unrealistic that you're going to have a relationship with every single person that sent you music. Like, it's just, you know, you don't go on Beatport and be like, oh, who's like, you know, let me get to know this guy and that girl or whatever. But yeah, fair enough. Do you think that artists are meant to reflect the world, or do you think they're meant to offer an escape, or it could be a bit of both?
I do think it is a bit of both. Yeah, I think like the whole art imitating life imitating art is like a real thing. And I think our job is to, again, I think it's to create a space where emotions can come up. So, you know, the idea that we listen to, like, if you're sad, you might listen to sad music, but it's to make you feel better. And it's not so much about the emotion the song is conveying, but it's about the song creating space for you to emote in a way. I think our job is, yeah, to like open that portal a little bit for people who can't open it themselves with their own creativity, or for people that can. But yeah, it's like a window into something, and I think music is like what that window is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, if you like are familiar with breath work, like it's nice to kind of like, you know, follow techniques, because you know that that's going to help you access and go into a place that you're specifically seeking to go into, right? What does the next evolution of Enamour like in the coming months? You mentioned obviously, you know, you've got some releases lined up for next year and everything, naturally. But yeah, like, just as a person, as a human, like, what are you thinking about right now in terms of your growth?
I definitely want to start the plannings of launching a label.
Ooh.
Might already be planning.
Yay! Nice.
Yeah, I think I'm just at this point where I am writing a lot of music that I don't think belongs with any specific label, and it's so uniquely me that I want to have my full artistic control over it. There's a lot of tracks that I've been holding on to for a long time that are just special, or just, you know, just quirky enough where it should have my stamp on it. So yeah, the label is definitely something that I'm hoping to have ready next year, and just kind of honing my sound a little bit to make sure there's just less confusion with what people are going to get when they come to a show, because the sound has been so varied. I don't want to necessarily like give up on any one thing, but try to focus on combining the styles and the emotions into songs that sort of tie it all together finally.
How do you think that affects the relationship with promoters, or the interests? Like, does that put you in like, not a weird, or but just like more of a, I don't know what the right word is, but just like, yeah.
It's tough, honestly. I think that was something I talked about on Thursday too. Like, it is a slower path that I've taken. I mean, I think I've reached a point of success relatively quickly, but the people who make it the furthest, the fastest, I think it's because they have a very narrow brand and sound where you always know exactly what you're going to get. And that's for a lot of reasons. The fans, just, you know, the average fan, sort of like a mid common denominator, doesn't want to be surprised too much. And, you know, kind of with like how like a rock band does an album and then they change their style and everyone says boo. Like, you want to be kind of down this lane. And then promoters also, they know exactly what they're going to get. If they need to fill a slot and, you know, there's no confusion, like he does this, she does that, we're good to go. And then on top of that, the Spotify algorithms, the DSPs, like it just kind of pays to be a little narrow and consistent. And then again, DJs, if they play 3 of your songs, release, that 4th song, they might not even listen to the promo. They might just download it because they're like, I know it's going to be good. I know what it's going to be like. And then they put it up in Record Box. They listen to 15 seconds of it and they'll still play it just because they have that trust in you. And I'm not saying that's the way everyone should do it. I didn't do it that way. But I've noticed all those things I just mentioned have been pain points where some DJs absolutely love a certain sect of my sound. But then if I put out something different, they either completely ignore the promo, and then that maybe kills the momentum for the promo I send after that because they're like, oh, he faltered a little bit. Or and then similarly, promoters, they might be expecting the Anjunadeep sound, and then I give them something darker and harder, or vice versa. It's always fine with the fans. I think the fans like me for me, and when I'm at the show, I can read the crowd and play what needs to be done. But there is this little bit of tension where it's just, we're not quite sure what side we're getting. And I like to just do all of it because I think a lot of fans like all of these styles together. It's not, isolated. And I think luckily the genre boundaries have kind of collapsed the past couple of years. So it's gotten a lot easier. But when I was first coming up, it felt like it might be more of a challenge.
So how do you navigate that pain point with a promoter? Like, would you kind of have that, or your management team have that conversation, before to say that's the kind of direction or style he wants to go in the show, or do it just sort of?
No, that rarely would happen. It's more so it took a little bit to find the right agent that understands let's get him playing with Lee Burridge, but also John Summit. Like a lot of agents are like, that doesn't cannot compute.
Connect. Yeah.
So that was one thing. And then I think also just kind of telling the story in a strategic way, which is tough because, again, you don't always have control of these schedules. But it's not so much just having direct conversations about these things. It's more so trying not to let it actually matter, if that makes sense. Like just kind of forging ahead and, saying this is who I am, trust that I know how to play your party.
Sure. Absolutely. And what came first in your case then? Was it management or agent?
Management. That's almost always the case. I would be kind of wary about getting an agent before a manager because you might get taken advantage of unless it's just happening super fast because you have a hit or something. But even then. And
okay, cool. What question do you wish the interviewers asked you but never have yet?
I do one day just want to anonymously talk about all the crazy stuff that's going on in the industry, but okay, don't necessarily want to be responsible for it.
Sure. But what kind of crazy stuff? Like we don't have to talk about it, but just
I think it would be useful. So it's a shame that I don't know his account offhand, but I was scrolling and found this Instagram account that he's doing a unromanticizing the industry series. He's been posting every day for a month.
I think I've seen it, and he's quite brutal with his
and I've reposted a couple of them, and I think it would be useful for the fans to understand why certain things are the way they are, because a lot of the times the things that are happening in the industry that are kind of screwing stuff up are unfortunately fan driven because it's a consumer industry. The companies doing things are doing it to make more money. The fans are the source of money.
Feeding that, yeah.
So I think if they knew and they could kind of vote with their purchasing power in a way that actually served their needs and served the artists that they love, the industry would probably be in a better place. But they don't necessarily know some of these things, like all the consolidation that's happened between promoters and festival brands, and how a vast majority of all the biggest artists are only represented by a handful of agencies, and they do these deals where you have to buy a bunch of artists at once, and that kind of creates this homogenization in festivals, especially in America. Just random little things like that, where it's not necessarily gossip or anything. It's just sort of understanding how the industry actually works and how we can do things that allow for the smaller artists to survive and make sure that we're not going in a place where everything starts to sound the same and it gets too big for its own good.
Yeah, and obviously the digital landscape is a huge part of that, because it's an echo chamber in a way as well.
Yeah. And the Spotify top 5 algorithm is a big pain point for me because it has a lot of my older tracks, and I think that's a lot of the times what might confuse a promoter or someone, because that's your kind of your business card,
Sure.
but you don't have control over it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be fun to just kind of talk about those things, but it would sound like an hour of complaining.
You could do an anonymous podcast with like one of those voice mute things. Yeah, well, I think that's a really good place to kind of wrap it up. Unless there's anything else you want to add.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Just happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming down and making the time, and really wishing you all the best for your future label. It's an incredible, like, it will be the most, like, I don't know, saddest, we don't know what like life holds, but I think it's just such a special kind of a seed to plant, really, and grow and sort of nurture, and it really will be your thing to kind of own and build your vision
really exciting
from. Yeah. Amazing. Nice one. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed having this conversation. If you want to grab a copy of today's show notes, then head over to missionmakers.com, where you'll also find notes from all of our previous episodes. And if you're interested in talking to me about future opportunities at Davos, producing podcasts, or coming down to some of our music and motorsports events, then you can reach out to me at Mission Makers or at dj.n1nja on Instagram. Thank you as ever for listening, and until next time, keep it laser focused.